Top story on ABC News Breakfast this morning. The political deadlock in Papua New Guinea has dragged into a third day. The country effectively has two prime ministers and two governors-general.
Sir Michael Somare and Peter O'Neill also have their own cabinets and their own police chiefs. How does this situation get resolved? Anne Toomey is an associate professor at the University of Sydney's Law School, and she's a constitutional law expert, and she joins us now. Anne Toomey, good to talk to you again. Good morning.
Good morning.
The situation as we have it so far, we have these two men who both claim to be prime ministers, and they each seem to have their own governor-general. First of all, how is it even constitutionally possible for that situation to exist?
Well, it's certainly a bit of a constitutional disaster, shall I say. And it's extremely complicated. One of the interesting things about Papua New Guinea is it's got a very, very detailed constitution which sets out an extraordinary number of different rules. But there's also problems with the underlying principles as well that we have here. On the one hand, you have one person saying they're Prime Minister who seems to have a support of the majority of Parliament, and normally the person with the majority of Parliament support will be the Prime Minister. But on the other hand, you have a court saying that somebody else is the Prime Minister. So you have a quite profound conflict here between the courts and the Parliament.
Which of those two bodies has the greater say, the Supreme Court or the voice of the Parliament?
Well, it's a funny thing. Normally you'd say, OK, whoever the court says is the Prime Minister because that's a matter of law, and then you work from there. But the other side of it is, normally whoever has the confidence of the Parliament is the person who's the Prime Minister. Now, the way this would normally play out would be, OK, if the court says that Mr Somare is the Prime Minister, then he would come to the Parliament, and the Parliament would potentially vote no confidence in him, and if they did vote no confidence in him, he'd have to resign, and the Governor-General would then appoint someone else, or if he didn't resign, the Governor-General would dismiss him. That's how things would play out in Australia. But the difference in PNG is that Mr Somare is staying out of the Parliament. So the Parliament on the one hand is saying that Mr O'Neill is the Prime Minister. The courts on the other hand have said that Mr Somare is the Prime Minister, and the Governor-General and the Queen are stuck somewhere in the middle.
So then if there was simply a no confidence motion, if Sir Michael Somare actually turned up to Parliament and such a motion was moved, would something as simple and straightforward as this actually resolve the situation?
Well, it would, but you've got to go through a set of procedures to get that no confidence motion going, notice and all the rest of it, so it would take a period of time to do. But it would also then involve the Governor-General taking the step of dismissing him if he didn't resign. But at the moment, we've got none of that actually properly in play, and I think that's one of the real difficulties.
And also we have these two Governors-General. And to me, how is it even possible for the floor of Parliament, as I understand what happened, the floor of Parliament voted to dismiss Sir Michael Ojo and then swore in the Speaker in order to become their new version of a Governor-General? How is that possible, or is it allowed under the PNG Constitution?
Well, it doesn't seem to be completely consistent with the PNG Constitution.
Right.
The PNG Constitution does have a provision in there that allows for the Speaker to be suspended, which is apparently what's happened. So, sorry, the Governor-General to be suspended. And if the Governor-General is suspended, then the PNG Constitution says that the Speaker automatically becomes the acting Governor-General. But it becomes more complicated because what it also says then is, first of all, the Speaker can't fulfil the duties of Speaker while being acting Governor-General. So we saw him sitting in his Speaker's chair there last night, seeming to be both, and that apparently can't happen. But it also says that the first thing that then has to happen is the Speaker needs to reconvene Parliament, and there needs to be a debate upon the Governor-General and whether the suspension should lead to dismissal. And it says, and when that debate ends, if an absolute majority of the Parliament has not voted to dismiss him, then the suspension is automatically lifted. Now, we saw footage of the Parliament yesterday where there was obviously some form of debate. Now, if they were debating the status of whether the Governor-General should be dismissed or not, and they didn't reach that resolution that he should be dismissed, then his suspension would have automatically been lifted. Now, I, along with everybody else, are completely bamboozled as to what actually happened in the Parliament there yesterday. It's not clear whether they voted for his dismissal or not.
Right.
If they did vote for it, then it goes to the Queen, and the Queen then would have to make that decision. If they didn't vote for his dismissal, but they did consider the issue, then and the debate finished, then the suspension ought to be lifted and he ought to be no longer suspended. Neither result seems to be the case from at least the facts that we know. So we're all completely confused at this stage.
And I think you can actually hear the gears of my brain spinning at this point. I'm just completely flummoxed by all of this. But I'm so glad you mentioned the Queen, because I'm just sort of, in a sense, going for the doctor here. Can the Queen kind of come in over the top of all of this and fix this?
No, I don't think so. Her role only arises if an absolute majority of the Parliament votes to dismiss the Governor-General.
Right.
Now, if that happened, it goes to the Queen, and the Queen would have to decide. But then she gets into a very tricky issue as to, well, first of all, that can only happen on the advice of the National Executive Council, which is all the ministers and the Prime Minister. And then the question she has to face, well, who is the Prime Minister? She's got this issue of, legally, am I being advised by a person who actually is the Prime Minister or not? And my suspicion is, in those circumstances, she would be very hard to contact by phone at the moment. I think that the Palace would be definitely trying to take the phone off the hook. And hope that the politics and the courts will sort the situation out before she has to make any decision about it.
Phone off the hook politics. I actually have never heard that phrase before, but I can see why it might be effective in this case. Anne Toomey, just finally, do you have a sense of how you think this might play out, and can it play out peaceably?
I think it certainly can play out peaceably, and of course we would all hope that it does. I think ultimately it comes down not to the questions of what the legalities are in the Constitution, but mostly this is really an issue of politics and the power of personality, and who has the most support. And the bottom line is, who's going to end up with the most support in the Parliament, because the Parliament obviously is necessary for any government to be able to carry on, to appropriate money, to pass laws. So in the end, whoever has the control of the Parliament will end up in control. It might end up that you end up having to have an election to sort it out at this stage, because you really need perhaps some voice of the people to make this decision rather than Queens or Governors-General.
And Toomey, really good to talk to you this morning. I'm so impressed by how you can keep this all straight in your mind. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.